There were great significant feedback from COP28. One of the feedback I see was the need that there was a requirement to accelerate investment in climate innovation.
I think the greatest outcome for me, I think, is the realization of the urgency of the opportunity as well as the climate challenge.
So one of the most significant outcomes was that it was acknowledged that fossil fuels are the root cause of climate change, and we agreed on their phase down.
It provides a framework for leaders collectively to know what are the commitments that we're making and where are we trying to go as a globe. I think the reason why the Conference of Parties is important is because it gives different countries an avenue to have multilateral discussions, but also it provides a framework for leaders collectively to know what are the commitments that we're making and where are we trying to go as a globe, and build accountability from different national governments as well.
There were great significant feedback from COP28. One of the feedback I see was the need that there was a requirement to accelerate investment in climate innovation. There were big conversations around the fact that current investment vehicles were not adequate, were too fragmented, and there was a need to build, to have a conversation. How do you accelerate investment for climate change? And another thing was also the connection of climate change to other multilateral issues that developing countries face, issues of aid, reform, issues of public debt, even issues of fiscal crisis that states are beginning to face, and how climate investments can mitigate some of these challenges. Also, there was the conversation on the loss and damage fund and the need for them to accelerate investment into those kind of vehicles. So it felt like it was an extension to further discuss on the Paris Agreement. But most of the thinking I'm saying is that the COP28 in Dubai was big on the fact that there's need for accelerated investment in climate change, and that's to be done with a high level of urgency.
So one of the most significant outcomes was that it was acknowledged that fossil fuels are the root cause of climate change, and we agreed on their phase down. The second one was we pledged $792 million to the Loss and Damage Fund, which signals progress despite the shortfall.
I mean, there are a number of initiatives that came through. For example, there's the AU Climate Change Resilient Development Strategy, which does build on previous work. There are a number of Pan-African initiatives which are supporting those sorts of activities. I think the greatest outcome for me, I think, is the realization of the urgency of the opportunity as well as the climate challenge. In many parts of the world, when one engages with climate, it seems such a complex problem that ordinary people often struggle. What is their role? What can they do? What can they change as an individual? Whereas what was really powerful about the African narrative is, if we look at, for example, cities and urbanization, the fact that African cities are going to probably double in size, more or less, depending on how one looks at it, in the next 30 to 40 years. These are places of intense opportunity when it comes to carbon sinks, when it comes to biosmart construction, when it comes to different ways of thinking about energy, resource, and so on, but also innovation. So I think the key outcome for me was the recognition that Africa is a continent of opportunity that is of global significance, not just of African significance. The other important point is, I would add, is that the shift from fossil fuels to a bioeconomy is one that we have to continuously drum in. It might sound like a simple and an easy thing to be understood, but it's quite a fundamental transition to tell a country that might have an abundance of gas or other sorts of fossil fuels and identify that there are opportunities from a bioeconomic perspective, which allows for nature positive solutions to come to the conversation and livelihoods that are actually sustainable. I think getting that narrative really landed at that summit. I think it's one that continues to be required to be landed. And that idea that, in fact, nature is an ally in terms of combating climate change is a very important message that came out of that summit, in my opinion.